hambe ukuthi kube kunaleli langa la namuhla lelikhulu nature abambisene nahulumende bebasolo bagubha lelanga itufunze ntonke telive lamuhla ke kutaba kunaleli langa lelikhulu legubha yona iWorld AIDS Day.
Kazi nje bebasibikela nemibiko ngiyakhumbula nebakashims nabasivetela sithombe sokuthi iHIV la ngwane sesihambe kangakanani sithombe nje seHIV kangwane quite a lot of positives there, no pun intended lungelele, but kunengilokuhle nangithi positive ngikhuluma iHIV but lapha I mean lokuhle kunengilokuhle labakuvetile imisebenzi labayendile ezibasebenta emimangweni in terms of nasikhuluma nje tindzaba accessibility tindlela labathambisa embili kakhulu tindzaba ukuthi ama-new infections sekanyuke kangakanani tindzaba labathambise embili kakhulu leto bathi ke even la ngwane accessibility sayihamba kahle kakhulu. There's quite adequate accessibility to amaphilisi HIV and AIDS, even though it's nje indvuna ngiyakhumbula indzaba entolungelele. You will remind me nakabeka we're not at 95 anymore.
Yeah, she said we have surpassed that labo 95 sesiku 94, 97 and 96.
Exactly. So enqinye silimelela kuma new infections kuphela, but on the other categories we've made quite significant progress lokhu indzaba lenhle kakhulu. Siyethemba lokuthi ezisitawungena eminyakeni lomusha abantu batawusasancumule tinsha kunang December tinombolo tebantu tinganyuki.
Yes, all right. Namhlahlelene ke mbukele sabe sikhulumisana nabodokotela labasuka khona at the clinic group sikhuluma kabanti ngesifo ihypertension, high blood pressure. Sidakhulumisana kabanti nje ngama causes and symptoms ukuthi ingabe vele mhlawumbe ngidawutibona ngani mangabe ngidisola ukuthi nginaso lesifo ihypertension. Sidabe sikhulumisana nabo lomhla ekseni nga 6:30.
Kanti ke batasjoina nebaka kwakha invoza kutasikhulumisa ngelihlelo labalichuba kwele women employment to economic recovery lolu in alignment nemsebenzi lebesolo uchutshwa nguye hulumende emimangweni and ama consultations mayelana ne-marriage bill. Sidaba khulumisa nje ekuthenini how does it align ukuthi basachuba le women employment economic recovery yini vele tindvala batibona kola mimangweni ukuthi banyatheleke kangakanani bomake especially in the workplace lokuthi indzaba vele tikhulunyiswa kakhulu around the world.
Yes, kunjalo kanti njengoba sikuba nje iWorld AIDS Day sidandlalela iclip imessage from nature director babekhanya mabuza siphinze sibuke nama statements la khokhwe nguye secretary general waka UN kanye newaka UNAIDS. Kwanyalo sathel khefu sibene tindzaba futhi ecala.
It has just gone 10 minutes after 6. Ake sithathe indzaba tethu tekucala. Iparlamente elive sayigubhela usuku lwetempilo lelihlanganiswe nelisuku lwekwetfulwa luhlaka leminyaka lemine lwesifo iAIDS. Lo msebenzi kubhekeke ukuthi wetfulwe ngundvunankulu Cleopas Dlamini lomelelwe indvuna yetempilo Lizinkosi. Insatheli yemsakato samkelisiwe Khoza ihlanganiselela ngombiko.
Kufaka ligalele tindzabeni kuncoba sifo iAIDS kanye negciwane HIV lapha eveni. Iparlamente elive ngalesithathu igubhela ilanga letempilo nalapho kuphinzwe kwabuketwa khona tindzaba tesifo iAIDS kwaphinzwe kwetfula nalo lihlaka letawubuka kucedza sifo iAIDS khona eParlamente elive seminyaka lemine lesitawusuka eminyakeni lesetulu sefika eminyakeni wa 2026. Lelanga lalomuhla ke licale ngalo lihambo lesuke khona eParlamente elive lafika khona enkundleni yesiveka somhlolo. Umhlonishwa ndvunankulu Cleopas Dlamini akhuluma kulo msebenzi ucele yona tindlu tetimbili teParlamente ukuthi tilibambise live laseSwatini kuncoba sona sifo iAIDS lapha eveni. Kanti mvunankulu elive bekamelwe indvuna yetempilo Lizinkosi.
This year's theme resonates with with what Parliament stands for as representatives of the people, passing inclusive legislation representing all Emaswati and ensuring resources are used efficiently to benefit all Emaswati through the oversight role. It is encouraging to see Parliament leading by example in such an effort, and I believe others in government will also follow this direction.
Umcondzisi wenhlangano UNAIDS lapha eveni Rose Craig yena unxuse malunga ePhalamende ukuthi ahamba yoba mahlahlandlela khona etinkundleni telive ekuncobeni sona sifo i-AIDS eveni.
The third thing I'm asking you as parliamentarians is please get the men involved in the HIV response. I'm asking the parliamentarians that are here and that are men to please set the example in your constituency by being the first one to get health services. When you set an example, the other men are going to do it.
Isekela mengameli wendlu yetimbunga impunga Ndumiso Mdluli ivetile nayo ukuthi indzaba yesifo i-AIDS kanye neligciwane i-HIV indzaba lebita kubambisana nhlangothi tonke.
This HIV and AIDS Wellness Strategic Plan is a message that will value and appreciate the human resource in the workplace.
Tisebenti tePhalamende ngekuholwa nguye umhlonishwa Ndvunankulu ebekamelwe nguye indvuna yetempilo lezinkosi kanye nemcondzisi wetinkulumo khona ePhalamende Petros Mavimbela babese bangena khona emsebentini wekutivocavoca kuchubeka nekucinisekisa tempilo. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika samkeliswe khoza ngasikhumbuzo Dlamini Galobamba.
Kanti-ke liphinile Ndvunankhulu Themba Masuku lithi eMaswati akacaphele bantfu labahamba bangena emakhaya bathi bendala ucwaningo ngekuthi mangakhe eMaswati lasafuna ukuthi live libuswe ngetinkhundla. Masuku bekakhuluma emahhovisini etindvuna tembuso emhlanganweni nebetindzaba.
Kunenkulumo ke lekhona lesithola singulumende uthi kunebantfu labangena emakhaya ngelikhaya babuta ukuthi indzaba yetinkhundla ngikuphi lokufisako uhulumende wetinkhundla noma uhulumende wemaphathi na sithi ke siyawexwayisa nje eMaswati kuthi umuntu lotawuhamba ngena asho njalo la ngoba nangabe wentala uphenyo uhulumende kufuneka athi ukuthi kukhona lo wentala uphenyo uma ngabe uhulumende athi kukhona tindlela tawuthi atentiwe kude abantu batophepha labantu ke nibakwentekani na so sibhekeke ukuthi eMaswati akunakelele lokho labanye bafika bathi sifuna sithunywe nguhulumende sitobuka ngokuthi i-security yakho injani bafuna ukutokwenta ningacali nje nibalalele bonke labo bantu labo.
Kanti-ke kulethi ichamuka etiko letempilo indvuna yetempilo lizinkosi sethule umbiko welucwaningo lwesithathu lwesimo se-HIV lowatiwa ngele-SHIMS 3. Indvuna ithi live lisatsinga kucinisa etindzabeni tebantfu labasha labatfola leli gciwane pheceleti yema-new infections.
Ngalesithathu litiko letempilo ngekusekelwa nguhulumende welive leMelika letfule umbiko wesithathu wesimo seligciwane i-HIV lapha eveni i-Eswatini HIV Incidence Management Survey liwatiwa ngele-SHIMS 3. Indvuna yetempilo lezinkosi yetfula lombiko ivetile ukuthi lizinga leligciwane i-HIV lapha eveni liyachubeka nekwehla kanti nematfuba ekuthi litfolakale nawo ayachubeka nekwehla.
When we look at HIV prevalence, we are getting we're getting some encouragement from the trend of HIV prevalence in the country, which was at 27% in SHIMS 2 in 2016, and it is now at 24.8%. That is amazing. The incidence today, we're even more encouraged that the annual HIV incidence is showing a declining trajectory from 1.13% in SHIMS 2 at 2016 to, listen carefully, 0.62% in SHIMS 3 2021 surveillance. But this translates to approximately 4,000 new infections that occur in a year in the country. This is a call to continued action in HIV prevention.
Lenxusele live leMelika kuleli Jane Maloney yena uthi kude live lisinqobo sifo i-AIDS lidzinga kuchubeka nekusukumisa tinhlelo letawubukela kuvikela lona leligciwane kubantfu labasha.
We now have new prevention tools such as pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, which have demonstrated efficacy. PrEP is a safe and effective medicine that can prevent you from getting HIV from sex. We must both expand availability and empower our young people, and especially at-risk young women, to embrace this powerful prevention tool and protect themselves.
Live laseSwatini liqale ngeminyaka wa-2011 kwethula lo mbiko, wesibili wethulwa ngeminyaka wa-2016, kanti kumanje sekangetulu kweli-15 emave lasanda lolucwaningo lwesimo seligciwane i-HIV. Etindzabeni ye-Eswatini TV, kubika Samukeliwe Khoza ngasikhumbuzo Dlamini eMbabane.
Kanti-ke kulethi chamuka itiko letasekhaya indvuna yelitiko letasekhaya umvane Kusile Dlamini uthi imitsetfo losakhankhanyo lotawubuka tindzaba tekuphuma nekungena eveni i-migration bill utawulisita live kutsi lihambisane naleminye imitsetfo yemhlaba yekuphuma nekungena kwebantfu yemaveni. Indvuna beyikhuluma ngesikhatsi kuhlangene tinhlangotsi letitsindzekako kubuketa lo mtsetfo.
Litiko letasekhaya ngekusebenzisana nenhlangano yakamhlaba lebuketa indzaba tekuhamba kwebantfu i-International Organization for Migration IOM libambe umhlangano netinhlangotsi letitsindzekako etindzabeni tekuphuma nekungena kwebantfu eveni kuchiza nekuthatha imivo ngemtsetfo losakhankanywa lotawubuka tona tindzaba tekuphuma nekungena eveni i-immigration bill wemnyaka wa-2022. Indvuna yelitiko umvane Kusile ikhuluma kulo mhlangano ithi lo mtsetfo kulokunye uhlose kutsi live laseSwatini lihambisane naleminye imitsetfo yemhlaba lebuke kona kuphuma nekungena kwebantfu emaveni lahlukene.
Mtsetfo wethu singawulungisa njani ukuthi ufithe lesimanje manje ube up to date ukhulumise bantfu labaphila kulesikhathi lesiphila kuso, ngoba nawuthi yabuka nawubuka emuva ubuka lo mtsetfo wethu uyabona ukuthi umvu nje nangabe afikile la kangwane asivakashi kumbe so uyaganga kumbe so letha documents la false kumbe so forgile kumbe so bribe lomnye umuntu bonke labamvu laba umthetho ubavumela ukuthi nje ababhadale 500 emalangeni bese bayaphuma bayahamba babuyele ekhaya. And futhi akuchazi nalokuchaza ukuthi lo muntu wende licala lelithini, noma ngabe wendeni 500 emalangeni. Lo mthetho wethu lomdzala wa 40 years usho njalo ukuthi nje noma ngabe wendeni 500 emalangeni uyaphuma. Phinde futhi sitobuka neke ukuthi umthetho wethu phela awube updated nema international laws. Asihlangane asente lokonekako emhlabeni wonke kungabe ukuthi sekukhona lapho sisala ngemuva khona.
Lo mhlangano utawuthatha emalanga lamathafu kanti lona lomdzala umthetfo we-immigration wemnyaka wa-1982. Etindzabeni ye-Eswatini TV, kubika Samukeliwe Khoza ngasikhumbuzo Dlamini kumathapha.
It is just gone 21 minutes after 6. Ake sithathe tindzaba temidlalo. Iphalamende yakangwane seyisukumise ngalokusemthethweni luhlelo lwekushukumisa umtimba loluhambisana ne-strategic plan semnyaka wa-2022 to 2026. Iphalamende ithi isifiso saloluhlelo kusita abahlonishwa, timphunga kanye netisebenti tephalamende kutsi tihlale tinguletiphilile. Lolu hlelo lusukunyiselwe enkhundleni yesive kasomhlolo lapho kube sekuba nemidlalo lehlukahlukene lefaka khatsi umdlalo webhola, umdlalo wemphebedo, i-table tennis kanye naleminye.
Kube i-department kugcine kuna full coordinator losebenza ndzaba awareness ikakhulu sibuke kakhulu ukuthi bahlonishwa mase baphuma bahambe eParliament uthola ukuthi le stress levels ayenyuka nalabangena uthola ukuthi ungena letinye izinto angadadi kahle. So le initiative kwanyalo sitayitesta ngekuthi siyente once a month, but staff sesibekile ku service staff every Friday so kusona ka12 manje siba ne-activity let's say bese kuthe malungu eParliament kwanyalo sitakwenta ama-monthly activities bese siyabuka ukuthi siyirola njani kuyaphambili.
Thile sikhuthata ukuthi nesintiko letensha emasiko nemidlalo ukuthi wonke nabo bahlonishwa nema-senators timphunga bativoce kuqinisa umtimba nekokuthi umtimba ukhona ukuthi bese ulwa netifo letikhona nekokuthi nje sihlale singilabo labaphilile laba healthy futhi mhlambe pheceleti.
Ngaleyo ndzaba ke siyatiphetha temidlalo sitawuthatha likhefu singakayi emakethe sitawuthatha simo selitulo.
Athunze sinemukele sekusele nawo losanza kuzivulela it's 24 minutes after 6 namhlahlelweni Kusile breakfast show is the 1st of December 2022 sikubhala ilanga lelikhulu emhlabeni iWorld AIDS Day ngaphansi kwesicubulelo sithi equalize ending AIDS Eswatini ending AIDS for all takumleke ukuthi lamuhla ilanga lelikhulu lokutshwa khona kugege kepha sikhulumisene nayo umcondzisi wenhlangano yaka Nature Khanya Mabuza kusiniketa nje umlayedo wakhe kulelanga lelikhulu asesemlalela kuthutheteni.
Kusekuvele sengwini omhlaka 1 kuDisemba lapha umhlaba wonkana ufuna ukubona emave ukuthi athini ngeAIDS. Angichaze ukuthi lelanga lelikithi lisho ukuthi siba usendeni lomnyaka lodlulile. Siphindze sisho futhi ukuthi kutawusendela kanjani ke kusuka kulomnyaka lodako kuze kufike lomnyaka December. Sitawubika ukuthi sisebenza kanjani sina singiNature cishe kule minyaka ledlule. Ngisinnature wonke lo sebenza ngeHIV. Lapha sibuka tingoni letehlukahlukene sineminyaka nyalo cishe yofika 38 years sisebenza neHIV kune tinkulumo etkhona kuze sala ipheli yona nangaba ipheli ayipheleni ngoba phela nang 2022 sokhona sitawube ukuthi sisebenza njani kule minyaka ledlulile angisho ukuthi kukhona lokunene lokwento eMaswati and lokho akufuneka ukuthi sikubukele phansi asebenzile eMaswati sitawuvumisa lo sibukele nje lihlelo leHIV lapha eveni longamhlonishana uNkulunkulu utasichaza sisebenza njani kakhulu singeMaswati kwesibili ke sisho ukuthi sisasebenza kunetingoni letsele lesicabanga ukuthi imcwa ukuthi sina ngabe sikhuluma ukuthi siyanqoba vele nya leHIV kukhona bafuna sithi sebenze sitakhuluma ke kusasa leto tindzaba leto ikakhulu ke nawubuka ukuthi umhlaba hlangene nakabuka umhlaba wonkana nje ukhanze ukuthi kunengi lokuthi abantu abafanani kunekuhlukahlukana labanye abathola amaphilisi ngesikhathi labanye vele abadulela lamaphilisi labanye abanikwa nje sanhlobo lamaphilisi kuleminye imikhakha lapha emhlabeni sineke la kangwane sibuye ukuthi sidawe ukuthi ngekulinganisa futhi nje sibuka onke amaswati singanqoba njani iAIDS kuwonke umuntu lokhona eveni sinetinhlangothi ke ngaphandle vele nawubuka nje kunelihlangothi lebantwana angicizelele la ngoba ngathi sesibuka umntwana nomfana kuphela yes it is true umntwana nomfana netinkinga letiningi letedlula umntwana nomfana kodwa akayiphelele khona lapho leyo ndzaba nemntwana nomfana siyambuka ukuthi yena ke ukhula njani emantfombatana asikutsata asihlupha ngekuthi nawubuka asikhahle esiningi tinombolo tawo tiyakhuphuka tembili te-HIV lama new infections kwesibili ke utawuva futhi kusasa ukuthi nasibuka futhi lo 95 kulentsha sisele ngaphandle asikakamshayi kukho abasingamshayi khona lo 90 nje wecala uyabona ukuthi bekunene iseleke lapho ikakhulu kubantu abethu bembali lekufuna sikhuluma ngoba kakhulu emajaheni nakhona kunemajaha nawubuka kule minyaka kusuka 24 uze uyofika 35 years nakhona afuna sikhuluma indzaba lapho ukuthi sibathini bona ngoba phela utakhumbula khoza ukuthi leli likusasa lethu lela ephambili utawuva ke kusasa tinhlangothi etasebenzisa ngoba vele sifuna ukuthi nakufika lo mnyaka wa 2025 2030 kube i87 kuneligiya ke vele sitalishinja ukuthi wonke umuntu siyamthola ngendzaba yeHIV futhi wonke umuntu uthola lisite ngekulinganisa wonke umuntu okhona eveni sitawubuka inhlangothi lahlukahlukene kunebantu ke lesinabo lesitakhuma ngabo kusasa kunabo sisi labakhanza lamgwaqweni nabo balithola lisito kunabo babe lanabelili babo nakhona lapho kufanele sikhulume ndzaba leto kusasa ke sitabe sigege sibe sikhulumisa umhlonisha ke utabe sinika indlela esitawusebenza ngayo eminyakeni lodaba
uteka yona lapha Mr Khanya Mabuza from Nature lungelele I think lokho ngithusa kakhulu kuva ukuthi abantu labasha kungathi ngibo laba ndale prevalence yale HIV lapha evele ukuthi ibese dulu nakathi nje ku 95 target abantu labasha basalele emuva in fact kulama populations abantu labasha khwala bangafiki ku 90 that is scary to me
yeah scary I think lokunye labake bakuvete nje baka Nature ngilokuthi vele ama new infections atfolakala kibo bamhlabasha lekuyimvo lebakhathatako especially because bamhlabasha ngicabanga ukuthi ngibona banelwadi kakhulu ngaso lesifo kepha ke batawucubeka basifundise sive kabanti ngaso sifo seAIDS kanye negciwane HIV kanti ke sichubekela nje embili kube khona nalakshido UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres ngalo lilanga la namuhla le World AIDS Day asesibuke ukuthi statement sakhe sithini
So on this World AIDS Day, we are calling out in one voice, equalize. The equalize slogan is a call to action, a call to adopt the proven practical actions that will help end AIDS, more availability, quality and suitability of services for HIV treatment, testing and prevention. Inzaba nje la igcizelela kakhulu ukuthi le slogan njengoba si like thenini kufuna le accessibility yale HIV nasithi by 2030 kufuna bese eradicate HIV. Antonio Guterres in his full speech ubetela ukuthi we are off track masikhuluma nje iqiniso, we are off track nasithi by 2030 we want to have eradicated HIV. Uthi millions of people still risk kuthola HIV. Uthi ke kufuna ukuthi the new programs labatawufaka kube inhlelo letawuqinisekisa ukuthi vele kutholakala kwema services HIV your ARVs and everything else labasitshela ngawo betempilo kuba easily accessible, kungabi expensive, kutholakale melula, kube kufutane, close proximity.
Yes, lo nyala kuveta nje kule statement sakho uyaveta ukuthi the inequalities that perpetuate the AIDS pandemic can and must be overcome. We can end AIDS if we equalize. Nokulasho ukuthi we can if isitawukhona ukusebenzisana, if isitawukhona ukuthi setinikete isikhathi satilwati ngaso sifo HIV and AIDS, pheze futhi sitivikele ekutholeni HIV kuhle kutawehla wona ema new infections. Kanti statements sesasibuka ngiso sakhe UNAIDS Director Winnie Bianima lo Executive Director wenhlangano kamhlaba yetempilo lebuketwa natindzaba ta AIDS lothi yena World AIDS Day is a moment to honor over 40 million lives lost to AIDS, take stock of the AIDS response and commit to ending AIDS, enabling girls to stay in school until they complete secondary education reduces their vulnerability to HIV infection by up to 50%. When we include comprehensive sexuality education and other measures for girls' empowerment, then their risk is reduced even further. Indzaba yebantfu labasha ngicabanga ukuthi ngiyona nje vele indzaba mlomeni kitoleti khulumi bayaveta nje ukuthi vele abantu labasha kwangathi ngibona vele kumele ukuthi babukisiswe ekutheni balithole lwati ngaso nge-HIV and AIDS.
Kanti ke Executive Director in this same speech lesingakhona nje include lapha ukuthi uyaveta ukuthi beyond this what you have just highlighted lungelele ukuthi we must combine services for sexual and reproductive health together with services for preventing and responding to sexual and gender-based violence and HIV, which is quite a very important linkage. Now tawukhumbula lungelele ukuthi every time nasiba nabo betempilo nasikhulumisa indaba tabo gender-based violence bayiveta le linkage ukuthi masilukubetana ngetebulili the chances of kunyusa HIV abamanengi lamathuba lawo ngoba most of the times when people get raped, when people get violated sexually, it is without consent and chances are there is no condom being used there. So kuthola ukuthi igcone le HIVs nalo seliyaphepeteleka ngalolu hlangothi.
Yes, she also continues to say discrimination against marginalized people is hurting the HIV response. So globally, gay men and other men who have sex with men are 28 times more likely to be infected with HIV. People who inject drugs have 35 times the risk, sex workers 30 times the risk, and transgender women 14 times the risk. So
ngiyangithusana ukuthi inzaba nje abantu labasebenzisa itsakamiva nokuthi risk yokuthi bathwele HIV imephi ne sex work lokho inzaba iSenate letikhulumisako la ngwane. I remember 31 October Senate President uhlangene netimphunga bakhulumisa inzaba, in fact Nature was there as well, bakhulumisa inzaba yokuthi nasibuka le HIV lesithombe se HIV la kangwane letinhlangothi leti these marginalized groups sesingisi kubanga ukuthi marginalized groups laba lokuthiwa babaniketwa umbalandlanti libandlululo. You talk about the LGBTQI community, you talk about bantu be sex work. Hulumende usabuketa nje tidlato ukuthi tindzaba leta addresswa kanjani leti. In fact na minister lizinkosi ukuhighlightile lapha ekuthenini moving forward nabika lo mbiko itolo ukuthi these are some of the things that need to be addressed as soon as possible.
All right, yes, mbukeli sicubha nje sikhulume ngayo indzaba ye World AIDS Day. Sisaqhubeka nalo hlelo kwanyalo sitawuthatha likhefu ubheka ukuthi sikhulumisane na dokotela losuka the clinic group sikhuluma ngabantu ngesifo se hypertension. Let's take a break, sabiya khona manje.
your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
I do the most. Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni per month. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store.
We're good together. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Right. Welcome back. So ubukela hlelo Kusile Breakfast Show sikuvusele nawo losanza kusivulela lo muhla nje solo sikubhalona lilanga lo World AIDS Day. Sina Dr. Kusile suka the clinic group sikhuluma kabanti njengesifo se high blood pressure lesathiwa ngokuthi hypertension. Hypertension ke ingoti kakhulu ngokuthi bese seyikhoza tifo letiningi lefaya khathi sona stroke. Siyakhulumisana naye Dr. Kusile kuva ukuthi ibangwa in high blood pressure ngambe vele mhlambe yini singayenda kuzama ukuyivikela. Good morning and welcome, Dr. Kusile. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's talk about high blood pressure. As we've just said before we went on air that you have seen a lot of people that have been diagnosed with high blood pressure or hypertension. What exactly causes it and what symptoms can we look out for?
Okay, thanks. Good morning, Balalele. So blood pressure is a chronic condition that is that affects most people. Some are unaware, so in the sense that it's asymptomatic. So people could be moving around, living their daily lives with actually high BP readings. So which is why most of the times when it's diagnosed, it's actually an incidental finding, where you're saying that you go to the hospital for maybe petom kuhlane or whatever you go there for, then they measure it using a machine, which is a sort of a standardized tool. So then they find that it's high, but you're not there really because you've got BP, you're there for another reason, or you're pregnant, you're there to test for HIV, then they decide to measure it, then they find that it's high. So the way we measure BP is, I'm sure most people have seen that it's a fraction. So the top number is what we call the systolic blood pressure, and then the bottom number is the diastolic blood pressure. So the systolic blood pressure, I'll just explain briefly what it is. This is a measure of the contractility. Remember, the heart has to pump out blood, and then once the blood goes out, it relaxes to allow blood to come in again in preparation for the next cycle where it comes out. So when it pumps out blood, that's what you feel as a pulse, right? And then it relaxes to allow the blood to come in. So that measure of contractility, of how much the heart is pumping out blood, that's your systolic blood pressure, the number that you find on top. So whenever it's above 140, then we regard it as hypertension. And then the number below, that's the diastolic one, where the heart is relaxing. So normally if it's around above 90, then it's elevated. Okay. So as to the causes of hypertension, so most of the causes actually are unknown. 95% of the cases, we call it primary hypertension, so which is linked to the family history of hypertension. Let's say your parents are hypertensive, or any other first-degree relative has hypertension, so you're more likely to also have hypertension. And also environmental factors contribute towards hypertension. And then the other set, the 5% of causes, is we call it secondary causes, because it's due to something else. Let's say if you've got conditions of the kidney, for instance, where your kidney is not working properly, so it sends signals to the brain, and there's a release of hormones that actually cause the BP to be high, or endocrine disorders. Endocrine, we mean hormonal disorders, where you're talking about things like diabetes, thyroid disease. So those also contribute to that. Yeah.
All right. So, Dr. if I may ask, who is affected by high blood pressure? I've seen it mostly on adults, but is it possible that children can get hypertension as well?
Yes, indeed, they can get hypertension, especially due to other causes. Let's say, for example, if they have a kidney disease that lead to retention of fluids, or they're on certain medications. It's just that people always think that hypertension is something that affects the elderly, and yet it can affect people of any age range. Yes.
Okay. So what is a normal blood pressure? And how do I know if I have one? How often should I go and check, for my blood pressure?
Okay, so a normal blood pressure, in most cases, this is a BP that is around about 120, the systolic top number and below, or 80 and below. But we normally then have interest when it's above 140 or 90, where you're saying it's elevated. But something in between, we sort of grade it by stages. So 140 or 90 and above, it's sort of stage 2 hypertension. You do have stage 1, that is 130 to 139, where you actually you're not going to treat it, but you advise people to change their lifestyle, which I'll talk about later on.
Oh, yeah, speaking of the lifestyle, what is that lifestyle that we should live under, just to avoid, getting hypertension? Is it the food we eat? Should we exercise more often, drink more water? Yeah, what is expected of us?
Okay, so in terms of lifestyle, it's a number of factors. So what we look at is largely, you mentioned food, the food that we eat. So food is an important, an integral part of management of not only hypertension, of even other disorders like diabetes, even obesity, for instance, as a condition. So the idea is you need to eat like what we call a Mediterranean style of diet, where you eat less sodium, which is the salt, right? You reduce the sodium by at least maximum of 2.6 grams per day, and then increase potassium, your magnesium, so that at least it leads to a lower blood pressure. Increase fruit intake, your vegetables, eat fish and chicken, and try and cut down on meat that has what we call saturated fat. Okay, because saturated fat has a high cholesterol, which then also contributes towards the hardening of blood vessels, which then gives you a high blood pressure reading. And it doesn't stop there. It will also then predispose you to things like a heart attack, or narrow down the blood vessels in the kidneys, which then causes kidney disease as well. And whenever then the cholesterol, which is aligning the fat rather, that is lining the blood vessels, accumulates to a certain point where then the BP damages that, you can get a clot forming, which can actually dislodge. Let's say if a clot forms here and dislodges, then it can go to the brain, where it can actually give you a stroke. Yeah.
All right. So I want to ask, Doctor, I'm taking medication for high blood pressure. Yeah. Everything is normal, but then I just want to find out what situations or instances that can trigger my levels to shoot up. That anger, too much excitement, what are some of those triggers that can lead me to have a high level of blood pressure?
Okay. So you mentioned two things there. You mentioned that someone is on treatment. What can trigger a high blood pressure? At times, the goal of therapy is to manage it within a certain range, right? So what then happens is, if the medication is not enough, the dose is not good, if you're not taking the medication according to schedule, or you take it as and when you feel like it, which most of our patients do, whenever you feel a headache, you take the medication, and yet you're supposed to take it consistently to avoid the effects of hypertension. All right, so that's the first part. Then the second part, we all have situations that raise our blood pressure. Let's say when you are scared or when you're excited, your blood pressure will go up because your body produces what we call adrenaline, right? That adrenaline rush. So your BP will go up, but it's not sustained forever. It then comes down. Okay. So those are momentary sort of type of situations where BP goes up. Let's say if you're exercising, to try and carry you forward, then your BP goes up. And then once you rest, then it comes down. And then there's things like coffee, for instance, If you take coffee, your BP will go up, which is why then we don't want to measure BP soon after you take coffee. You want to wait for a certain period so that your BP is low. And then let's say you're walking in now and you ask me to measure the blood pressure. You've been running outside. If I measure it now, it will be high as well. So that's what we also try and educate our patients on as well with regards to what causes a raised blood pressure and what should they do about it. Yeah.
Okay, so what are the side effects of the medication that high blood pressure people take? Because I know some that have a headache. So what are the other side effects?
Okay, so the antihypertensives, there are many and they're diverse. So in the sense that they belong to different classes. So the side effects are mostly class-based. All right. So let's take for instance, if you are taking for those that are already on therapy, that are taking antihypertensives, your what we call enalapril, it can cause cough that is dry, and most cases the patients do come presenting with that. So one of the aims of us as practitioners or healthcare workers is to educate patients on the possible or common side effects so that they are on the lookout for them. Then they can actually try to help us to help them, so that we change the class to ensure that they are compliant. So because if you are to take a drug that is giving you problems, you are less likely to take it. And then that causes problems in the sense that you then get complications of hypertension. So the other issues that we see is headache, let's say from certain classes of drugs or swelling of feet. But at times then it can confuse the two, because a complication of hypertension is heart disease, which can also cause that. So you then need to go and report to your doctor or nurse so that then they can actually help you appropriately.
All right.
Yeah.
So are there any drugs that cause high blood pressure?
Yes, there are.
There are? Okay.
Yes.
What are those drugs?
Okay, so these drugs, I would like to classify them into two. So one of them is recreational drugs, you know, the drugs of abuse. Let's take, for instance, things like cocaine or stimulants. They do increase your heart rate and your blood pressure. All right. So that's one part. So a patient coming into the hospital may actually have a high blood pressure because of stimulants and all those drugs for recreation. And then the other part is when we use the drugs to treat a certain disorder. Let's say, for instance, you are treating ADHD, which is the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, where you use certain drugs like Ritalin. It can also contribute to a high blood pressure. And then your prednisone, every other person is taking prednisone, whether it's prescribed or not prescribed by a doctor. So we've seen that people do present with an elevated blood pressure, because it then leads to a heightened sensitivity to what we call angiotensin in the body. So those are some of the things that contribute to a high BP as well.
Okay, speaking of pregnant women, I also know that pregnant women do have a high blood pressure. How dangerous is it for them, you know, whilst carrying their baby?
It is a dangerous disorder which needs to be checked, because then it can actually progress if it's not managed and lead to loss of life and affect the unborn child, affect even the heart, similarly to what other people don't have. So what we then want to do is to make sure that the BP is well controlled, treated in a place where at least there's capability and there's availability of drugs. And then once you do that, then you prevent the complications of BP in pregnancy, because then we tend to see that they get a condition called preeclampsia and eclampsia, where then they can actually progress to a stage of fitting with effects on the liver and all that, with the loss of life in some instances for the mother and both the child.
Okay, so lastly, doctor, you know, how often should one go for a checkup, you know, just to check their levels of high blood pressure? And are there home self-testing kits that I can use just to check my blood levels every day, daily?
Thanks for that. That's an important question, more on the, let's say for those that are already hypertensive, right? So if your BP and your doctor or nurse is happy with the level at which has been attained, then you can be given longer scripts so that you can actually monitor at home. All right, you will monitor less frequently. But if we're not happy and your BPs are still quite high, so there's a danger there. You could actually have what we call end organ damage. So then the idea is to try and make sure that you come as frequent as possible so that we actually bring it down. All right. So for those that, let's say that you're not hypertensive, you probably going to be checking whenever you go to the hospital. And I would like to encourage people to out there to actually go at least once a year to get checked for any other disorder. It could be your eyes or your heart and everything. And the other thing that we encourage those who are already hypertensive or diabetics to actually see their doctors at least 3-4 times a year and get referred. We encourage referrals to specialists like your cardiologist. Remember, the hypertension and diabetes will affect the heart, right? So then the idea is to actually get your heart checked and assessed so that if you are already suffering from the effects of hypertension, we can try and stop the progression. Because if you leave it unattended, then you can get a heart attack, which is detrimental not only to yourself, but your family and your relatives and dependents.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us today. We're going to be speaking Dr. Kusile from the clinic groups ngesifo se-hypertension. Lakuvita ukuthi kubalekile ukuthi sihle sihlola ama-levels high blood pressure ukuthi eme kanjani ngalokuthi siyingoti kakhulu lesifo ngokuthi singabanga naletinye tifo letifaka ikhathi stroke. Asasel careful sitabe sachubeka nehlelo.
Lesi sikhathi lapho khona emaphoyisa agubha kuba khona kwawo even. Kulapho kukuthathwa khona sive ukuthi sike sihlale phansi sibuke bumcoka bemaphoyisa empilweni yabantu. Siphindze sibuke indlela letinsha tekuphepha kubo bonke bucala lobuveta sihloko. Sive sakangwane siyakhunjutwa ukuthi singawafaki emaphoyisa etinkulumeni tepolitiki ngoba liphoyisa alingeni futhi alingenelani nepolitiki. Emaphoyisa alwa nebucala netingoti temgwaqo kuphela nje. Ingako emaphoyisa athi wonke umuntu eveni akahlale ngaphandle kwekunceneka ukuthi angahle ahlaselwe tilwane tasendle. Umuntu lohlala Eswatini akatiphilele atisebentele ngaphandle kwekwesaba kuhlaselwa kwemucwa nekucekelwa phansi kwembahla yakhe. Nawe wena lophathekile emaphoyisa athi digulele kahle uze uphile ngaphandle kwekuphatamiseka. Lokungenteka ngekuthi tidlova tingene tihlasele labo labakunakekelako kuleyo ndlu. Sivele sihlakaniphile nguleso lesiphakamisa kusebenta kwemaphoyisa nabo bonke labalwa nebucala. Ngale kwaloko timbungushe tiyawuwangenela emazinyane kungenamuntu ekhaya. Lo mlayeto niulethelwa ngemaphoyisa embube abambisene nomsakato wetithombe.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Minutes before 7 o'clock, asenivusele siphinze sinimukele sidabuka simo semgwaqo lomhla ekseni na Constable Ndembendla sevusele fakuthi ngaba namhla ekseni khambeka kanjani emigwaqweni.
Ngikuvusele eMagagula, ngivusele naye umbukeliwe Kusile breakfast show. Imigwaqo elivela kaNgwane sesihlolile, imigwaqo leminengi iyahambeka, yebo kona ikhona levaliwe. kepha nje sithi la khona kunetithikabeto khona sive senkosi asiqhubeke sinake impawu letibekiwe sishayele ngalokukhulu ukucophelela kuze kuthi siphephe. Emadolobha elive omane siba netemgwaqo tiyasebenza tonke ngalokufanele ngaphandle kwedolobha lelikhulu laseMbabane la khona siba netemgwaqo lisemangwaneni singasebenzi inyalo ekuseni. Ekhathi edolobheni eMbabane sitaladi lesinguMakhosini Road lesisuka khona e4 Square siyaqhamukela khona eSifunzane Primary solo sivaliwe kulandzela ukuthi kuyakhiwa lapho. Lesinye sitaladi lesinguSomhlolo Road besisuka khona edolobheni siyaqhamukela khona kuBosport nakhona kuyakhiwa kepha-ke imotolo siyakhona sihambe ngenhlanye nje bashayeli abaqaphelisise lapho basasebenzisa loyo mgwaqo. Lomunye umgwaqo lesiwuhlolile ngumgwaqo losuka khona ehekeni laseNgwenya ubheke khona kaManzini kusuka lapha eNkoyoyo noma ke nawo usengangeneli lo mgwaqo loqhamuka khona eNkoyoyo lo mgwaqo lapho uvaliwe kuvalwe ke munye umzila lo ngasenxele imotolo ke ibhekekile ukuthi isebenzise umzila lo ngasekudla nje asishayele ngalokukhulu ukucophelela lapho sinake impawu letibekiwe siphinde futhi sibahloniphe lapho labakha wona umgwaqo nangabe kumbe sebasimisa bafuna kusebenza. Nasichubeka ngalowo mgwaqo lapha endasi kumakholokholo macondzana nje nalabe ngibika khona umgwaqo kuneloli lefele ekhathi emgwaqweni ivimbe umzila longasenxele nje nalapho azishayele kahle. Lentinye ke tifunza ihloliwe kude sifinyabeto lesikhona kungaba nje kufisela yena umbukeli usuku loluhle naloluphephile basetawusebenzisa yona imigwaqo yelive laKangwane.
Sibonga kakhulu Constable kusiniketala yombiko lomhla ekuseni asibahlela emakethe sibuye sithathe indaba futhi sibili.
I am a man in charge of my health. I use a condom every time. I have tested and I know my HIV status.
HIV prevention starts with me. In order to end AIDS, I have a right to fair treatment in access to HIV services.
Health facilities do not discriminate. Visit your nearest health facility for HIV services.
Ngekulinganisa, sinqoba i-AIDS kuwonke wonke. Equalize. Eswatini, ending AIDS for all.
This is PrEP, otherwise known as pre-exposure prophylaxis. PrEP is for HIV prevention. PrEP can be used by HIV-negative people to protect themselves from HIV. For more information on PrEP, visit your nearest health facility or call 2030.
Why should we pay our TV license?
The content on our local television is actually more up to date. The industry is enhanced.
It is a criminal offense not to pay your TV license and attracts a fine of 500 emalangeni or 6 months imprisonment.
And the industry is definitely blooming, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have for you. But we'll be right back just after the break and we'll give you more of Miss V.
Pay my TV license. That's why I can enjoy the benefits of an enhanced industry and keep track with recent transformation.
Mommy, who paid for a TV license and what are they paying for?
The owners of TV set and a gadget with a tuner like DVD set have to pay.
Pay your TV license at NetBank with the details provided on screen. Or use your cell phone via the mobile money pay. You could also visit your nearest post office and pay there. Pay your TV license via Eswatini Mobile Imali. Any TV device retailer can purchase a license to trade. Pay your TV license and enhance the industry.
Simthe sinimukele sikusele nawo losanza kusivulela sitawubuka tindzaba tefu tesibili tehlelo. Iparlamente liveze igubhela usuku lwetempilo lelihlanganiswe nelusuku lokwetfula luhlaka lweminyaka lemine lwesifo i-AIDS. Lomsebenzi kubheka ukuthi wetfulwe nguNdunankulu Cleopas Dlamini lomelelwe yindvuna yetempilo lezinkosi.
Kufaka ligale letindzabeni tekuncoba sifo i-AIDS kanye negciwane HIV lapha eveni, iParlamente live ngalesithathu igubhela ilanga letempilo nalapho kuphinzwe kwabuketwa khona tindzaba tesifo i-AIDS kwaphinzwe kwetfula nalo lihlaka litawubuka kucedza sifo i-AIDS khona eParlamente live seminyaka lemine lesitawusuka eminyakeni lesetulu sefika eminyakeni wa 2026. Lelanga lalomuhla ke licale ngalo lihambo lesuke khona eParlamente live lafika khona enkundleni yesiveka somhlolo. Umhlonishwa Ndunankulu Cleopas Dlamini akhuluma kulo msebenzi ucele yona tindlu tetimbili teParlamente ukuthi tilibambise live laseSwatini kuncoba sona sifo i-AIDS lapha eveni. Kanti Ndunankulu elive bekamelwe indvuna yetempilo lezinkosi.
This year's theme resonates with with what Parliament stands for as representatives of the people, passing inclusive legislation representing all Emaswati and ensuring resources are used efficiently to benefit all Emaswati through the oversight role. It is encouraging to see Parliament leading by example in such an effort, and I believe others in government will also follow this direction.
Umcondzisi wenhlangano ye-UNAIDS lapha eveni Rose Craig yena uncuse malunga eParlamente ukuthi ahamba yoba mahlahlandlela khona etinkundleni telive ekuncobeni sona sifo i-AIDS eveni.
The third thing I'm asking you as parliamentarians is please get the men involved in the HIV response. I'm asking the parliamentarians that are here and that are men to please set the example in your constituency by being the first one to get health services. When you set an example, the other men are going to do it.
Isekala mengameli wendlu yetimbunga impunga Ndumiso Mdluli ivetile nayo ukuthi indzaba yesifo i-AIDS kanye neligciwane i-HIV indzaba lebita kubambisana nhlangothi tonke.
This HIV and AIDS Wellness Strategic Plan is a message that will value and appreciate the human resource in the workplace.
Tisebenzi teParlamente ngekuholwa nguye umhlonishwa Ndunankulu ebekamelwe nguye indvuna yetempilo lezinkosi kanye nemcondzisi wetinkulumo khona eParlamente Petros Mavimbela babese bangena khona emsebentini wekutivocavoca kuchubeka nekucinisekisa tempilo. Etindzabeni te-Eswatini TV kubika samkeliswe khoza nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini Galobamba.
Iphenila Ndunankulu Themba Masuku lithi eMaswati akacaphele bantfu labahamba bangena emakhaya bathi bendala ucwaningo ngekuthi mangakhe eMaswati lasafuna ukuthi live libuswe ngetinkhundla. Masuku bekakhuluma emahhovisini etindvuna tembuso emhlanganweni nebetindzaba.
Kunenkulumo ke lekhona lesithola kosengulumende ukuthi kunebantfu labangena emakhaya ngelikhaya babuta ukuthi indzaba yetinkhundla ngikuphi lokufisako uhulumende wetinkhundla noma uhulumende wemaphathi na sithi ke siyawexwayisa nje eMaswati kuthi umuntu lotawuhamba ngena asho njalo la ngoba nangabe wentala uphenyo uhulumende kufuneka athi ukuthi kukhona lo wentala uphenyo uma ngabe uhulumende athi kukhona tindlela tathi atentiwe bude abantu batophepha labantu ke nibacaphele labafika batonibutha lembuto lefana nalena bantu labatowubuka ukuthi bangafike bebeni la ekhaya bangafike babulaleni la ekhaya bangafike bangene ngakuphi nabatokwenta kucala kuleli khaya so kufuneka nikugweme lokho sithi kude lesikwatiko singihulumende labo labathambelako sicabanga ukuthi ngilabagangako nangaba bakaphathi lokhu lokufanele ukuthi kubatise kuleli khaya ngoba tikhulu kufanele tatu ukuthi kwentekani nangabe abakaya esikhulwini vele batogana nangabe abakakhulumi nebantu mabandla laconzena abakakhulumi nahulumende vele basuke batogana bagwemeni ngoba nasebefikile utathi yevuve kuthiwa sebashisile babone nini benta lisu lokuthi abatohlola la ekhaya ukuze batokwadi ukuthi nasebaganga bangabaleka babhekephi ngikuphi lapha kunemigodi khona kunetigodi la kunematshe khona kuneticoko kufuneka ukuthi sibagadze bayingodi ke labo bantu labo so sibhekeke ukuthi eMaswati akunakelele lokho labanye bafika bathi sifuna sithunywe nguhulumende sitobuka ngokuthi i-security yakho injani bafuna ukutokwenta ningacali nje nibalalele bonke labo bantu labo.
Indvuna yetempilo lizinkosi seyethule umbiko welicwaningo lwesithathu lwesimo seligciwane HIV lwatiwa nge-SHIMS 3. Indvuna yethi live lisadzinga kucinisa etindzabeni tebantu labasha labatfola leligciwane pheceleti emanyweni HIV infections.
Ngalesithathu litiko letempilo ngekusekelwa nguhulumende welive leMelika letfule umbiko wesithathu wesimo seligciwane HIV lapha eveni i-Eswatini HIV Incidence Management Survey liwatiwa ngele-SHIMS 3. Indvuna yetempilo lizinkosi yetfula lombiko ivetile kutsi lizinga leligciwane HIV lapha eveni liyachubeka nekwehla kanti nematfuba ekuthi litfolakale nawo ayachubeka nekwehla.
When we look at HIV prevalence, we are getting we're getting some encouragement from the trend of HIV prevalence in the country, which was at 27% in SHIMS 2 in 2016, and it is now at 24.8%. That is amazing. The incidence today, we're even more encouraged that the annual HIV incidence is showing a declining trajectory from 1.13% in SHIMS 2 at 2016 to, listen carefully, 0.62% in SHIMS 3 2021 surveillance. But this translates to approximately 4,000 new infections that occur in a year in the country. This is a call to continued action in HIV prevention.
Kusile live leMelika kuleli Jane Maloney yena uthi kude live lisinqobo sifo i-AIDS lidzinga kuchubeka nekusukumisa tinhlelo letawubukela kuvikela lona leligciwane kubamfula abasha.
We now have new prevention tools such as pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP, which have demonstrated efficacy. PrEP is a safe and effective medicine that can prevent you from getting HIV from sex. We must both expand availability and empower our young people, and especially at-risk young women, to embrace this powerful prevention tool and protect themselves.
Live laseSwatini licale ngeminyaka wa 2011 kwetfula lombiko, wesibili wetfulwa ngeminyaka wa 2016, kanti kumanje sekangetulu kweli-15 emave lasenda lolicwaningo lwesimo seligciwane HIV. Etindzabeni yeSwatini TV, kubika samukeliwe khoza ngasikhumbuzo Dlamini eMbabane.
Indvuna yelitiko letasekhaya umfana Kusile ndiwe ithi umtsetfo losakhankanya lotawubuka tindzaba tekuphuma nekungena eveni immigration bill utawulisita live kutsi lihambisane naleminye imitsetfo yemhlaba yekuphuma nekungena kwebantfu emaveni. Indvuna beyikhuluma ngesikhatsi kuhlangene tinhlangothi letitsindzekako kubuketa lomtsetfo.
Litiko letesekhaya ngekusebenzisana nenhlangano yakamhlaba lebuke tindzaba tekuhamba kwebantfu i-International Organization for Migration IOM libambe umhlangano netinhlangothi letitsindzekako etindzabeni tekuphuma nekungena kwebantfu eveni kuchiza nekuthatha imivo ngemtsetfo losakhankanywa lotawubuka tona tindzaba tekuphuma nekungena eveni i-immigration bill wemnyaka wa 2022. Indvuna yelitiko umfana Kusile ndiwe ikhuluma kulomhlangano ithi lo mtsetfo kulokunye uhlose ukuthi live laseSwatini lihambisane naleminye imitsetfo yemhlaba lebuke kona kuphuma nekungena kwebantfu emaveni lahlukene.
Mtsetfo wethu singawulungisa njani ukuthi ufithe lesimanje manje ube up to date ukhulumise abantu labaphila kulesikhathi lesiphila kuso, ngoba nawuthi yabuka nawubuka emuva ubuka lo mthetho wethu uyabona ukuthi umvu nje nangabe afikile la kangwane asivakashi kumbe so uyaganga kumbe so letha ema documents la false kumbe so forgile kumbe so bribe lo mnye umuntu bonke labamvu laba umthetho ubavumela ukuthi nje ababhadale 500 emalangeni bese bayaphuma bayahamba babuyele ekhaya. And futhi akuchazi nalokuchaza ukuthi lo muntu wende licala lelithini. Noma ngabe wendeni 500 emalangeni, lo mthetho wethu lomdzala wa 40 years usho njalo ukuthi nje noma ngabe wendeni 500 emalangeni uyaphuma. Phinde futhi stopbuka nekwe ukuthi umthetho wethu phela awube updated nema international laws. Asihlangane asente lokwendekako emhlabeni wonke kungabe ukuthi sekukhona lapho sisala ngemuva khona.
Lo mhlangano utawuthatha emalanga lamathafu kanti lona lomdzala umthetho we-immigration weminyaka 1982. Edinsabente Eswatini TV kubika samkeliswe khoza nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini kumathapha.
Live lisathinga ukuqinisa etindzabeni ekuqinisekisa amalungelo ebakhoseli lapha eveni lokuvetwe lisekela lemphathi wakhomishana welibandla lelibuke amalungelo ebantfu ngesikhathi yetfula umbiko wesimo semalungelo ebakhoseli kuleli.
Nyaka wa 2020 libandla lelibuke tindzaba temalungelo ebantfu lapha eveni i-Commission on Human Rights and Public Administration lendele ucwaningo lolungakajuli kakhulu lokubuka inhlalakahle kanye nokugcinwa kwamalungelo ebakhoseli kuleli. Ngalesithathu ke leli bandla letfule umbiko walelicwaningo lapho khona lisekela la komshana kuleli bandla Kusile Dlamini uvetile ukuthi nanoma live laseSwatini lende taba letibonakalako etindzabeni tekunakekela emalungelo ebakhoseli tisekhona tingoni letidzinga ukuthi live litibukete.
Lesikutholile lokwakuba madima kwaba indzaba yokuthi kusasa isikhathi esise ukuthi umkhoseli atfole shosi make fika usuka ngasi umkhoseli usuka satocela ukukhosela kusho singila kusiyo ngipheceledi asylum seeker. So ukhaze ukuthi lesi sikhathi kusasa isikhathi esise ukuthi agcine live limbuketile libona ukuthi liyamnika noma lemniki ukhaze singaleso sikhathi ilungelo lakhe liyahlukubeteka ngoba kukhona tindvo la ngakhona ukuthi ithola lokunye lesikhanzile sikhanze ukuthi le ndlela lesibamukela ngabo noma lesibaphatha ngabo sibaphatha ungazuthi njena kumbe ama-migrants asibaphasi njengale tincumo nemigomo takamhlaba ukuthi kufuna simphathe masaka refugee nyalo simphase njengeliswati kungazi usivele ungithi konke lesikuthola ko lesimaswati naye uyakuthola mangabe kufuna sebenze uyosebenza nje athola umsebenzi njengeliswati.
Leli bandla lincomile ukuthi live lakhe imithetho letawuqinisekisa ukuthi labo labakhosela lapha eveni ngemva kweminyaka etsite bayalitfola lonke lisuto lahulumende. Kanti bakhoseli lababhalisiwe ngaphansi kwetiko letasekhaya lapha eveni bangetulu kwetinkhulungwane letimbili. Edinsabente Eswatini TV kubika samkeliswe khoza nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini ezulwini.
Isekela lemphathi wenyuvesi yaseswatini Professor Justice Twala selibongile abafundi benyuvesi yaseswatini labahlabene eveni lasendiya emqutshelwaneni we-hackathon babuya nemiklomelo. Inyuvesi ibe nemicimbi yokubabonga labafundi ngekumelela kahle live.
Emavikini lamabili lengcile abafundi benyuvesi yaseswatini bahamba bayochuzelana eveni lasendiya emqutshelwaneni lokwatiwa nge-hackathon lokusombulula izinkinga tempilo ngetebuchwepheshe kulokunye. Sebabuyile ekhaya labafundi kanzike babuya netindzaba letimnandzi njengoba bachutselene babuya netindondo. Labafundi ke bebanikwe ligama linye ukuthi kabahambe bayewuhlabana babuye nelwati. Lisekela lemphathi wenyuvesi yaseswatini Professor Justice Twala libabongele labafundi ngokutimisela.
This initiative is in line with the country's role in promoting financial inclusion and also promoting trade.
Mbongeni mjalo welibandla lelingamele tekuchumana kuleli i-Eswatini Communications Commission uthi insha sekubonakele ukuthi ibalulekile ngoba iyalikhombisa likhono layo njalo nayichutselana.
There is one thing that I wish we can do better is to involve youth in our day-to-day business and making sure that we incorporate them in our strategies.
Zandile Shabanguke nguyena ahlabene kanzike uyachaza ngomsebenzi wakhe.
My project was about detecting or is about detecting cyberbullying using Twitter or getting some data from Twitter, and we want to expand the project in a way that there can be a Twitter bot that can actually detect a comment, and if that comment is cyberbully, or if that comment is negative, the bot can detect the comment and block it, or even block the user.
Nalamanye ama-groups nawo-ke ahlonyelisiwe njengoba nawo asebenze ngokutimisela kanti-ke bathole imali lesuka etinkulungwaneni letisihlanu kuya etinkulungwaneni letilishumi-nesihlanu. Etizabeni ngengiyani Msibi nginasimuva Shongwe sisakwaluseni.
Babalanelo omkhulu etiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla Kusile mini somemetele ukuthi intengo ya diesel itawehla nga 60 cents ilitha kani intengo ya petrol na paraffin yona angeke ishintshe. Le ntengo lensha ya diesel itaqala kusebenza mhlalulunye enyangeni lesetulu. Inhlangano yesiphambano lesibovu ithi solo iyasebenza miningi imisebenzi leyicubako emangweni futhi isita wonke umuntu akukhathalekile ukuthi ukuphi noma ungubani. Emalunga enhlangano yesiphambano lesibovu achazele betinhlangano netinkampani letahlukene ngemisebenzi leyenziwa ngulenhlangano.
Inhlangano yesiphambano lesibovu ibona ubumcwabo ukuthi ake seyihlanganise labo leyisebenzisana nabo ngama corporates lekuthi inhlangano itahlukahlukene netinkampani kodwa bachazela ngemisebenzi leyendako kwesiphambano lesibovu ikakhulu kulamalanga lapho labanye sebane kungabade labanye bayacabanga ukuthi ngabe vele sisekhona inisiphambano lesibovu center imisebenzi ngalokufanele yinike emimangweni njengoba besateka ke itolo siphambano lesibovu. Lokukhulumela lenhlangano noNtobeko Mbuyana uyachaza ukuthi vele basekhona futhi bapheshenekile eminingi imisebenzi labayendako.
Sithiteke asisonzete letimo lakibo sitokhona ukuthi sithi nasihleli nabo sicela bathi ukuthi sicela nje letimo tinjani futhi senda njani futhi nanyalo sesihambe umgamo longanani ekusiteni sibabekele ke netithombe talasi sita khona bakhonile kutibonela ukuthi ingabe nabathi bafaka imali kubaphalali le mali ishonapi.
Mengameli wayo ke inhlangano yesiphambano lesibovu Bongani Maso naye ucizelele ukuthi vele bayasebenza abake minani.
Sikujabulile kakhulu lokho lokuthi nje le information sinikete bona babone umsebenzi baphalali. Nathi kube lithuba lokuthi sindlulise kubonga lokukhulu kubo ngoba kusapresentwa lana kuvetwa lokuthi lolu sito labasiniketa lona lwento umsebenzi umehluko longanani empilweni eMaswati.
Nanoma ke bukhona bukhudlukhulu yeveni lisibudile ukuthi ngabe lokho akubavimbelini ukuthi bahambe lokunye bangakhona ukufika etinzaweni sithe njengoba bafisile basike cha bona bayahamba bafike futhi ke abakhethi balala muntu nawo ufuna ofisile kubali volunteer kusoko siphambano lesibovu bathi ke tandla tabo divulekile. Kubika Giyani Msibi nginasimuva Shongwe sisemafini.
Inhlangano yeMerity isibuko Serenity Foundation ithi itawube inaka impilo yomfana lo umfana imfundzisa ngekukhula kwakhe kuti angavaleleki ngaphandle ekukhuleni kwakhe. Umsunguli wenhlangano Dudu Dube uchaze ngeluhlelo lwabo lokukhulisa umfana lo umfana labatawuba nalo ngenyanga letako.
Kutawuza kulenyanga letako inhlangano yeMerity isibuko Serenity Foundation ibe nehlelo lwatiwa ngeBoy Sport Camp kanhloso yekuhlomisa umntwana lo ngumfana ngekukhula kwakhe kulandzela kutsi bese kunakeke umntwana lo yintombazana sikhathi lesidze ikakhulukazi ngoba nelive ligubha tinsuku letilishumi-nesithupha tekulwa nekuhlukubetana netebulili i-16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Umsunguli wenhlangano Dudu Dube uthi tinhlelo tekufundisa umntwana lo ngumfana tiyingxenye yekusebenta kwabo nemigomo yabo.
Let's come together and tackle the issues that boy child is going through. Boy child has not been given the attention that he needs. And we are also bringing in as team of social workers from iBoost. Hence we appreciate the partnership with iBoost. We'll be offering one-on-one counseling to our boys.
Nalabatawube basebenzisana nabo kulolu suku bavete ukuthi kunengi lokubhekekile nalokuhleliwe lokutawumsita umntwana lo ngumfana asakhula.
We are expecting the boy child to grow up to be a provider. We are expecting the boy child to grow up to be a protector. We are expecting the boy child to provide a sense of purpose, be it through leadership or other aspects. Yet that seems to have so many odds against it.
Le Boy Sport Camp itawubanjwa mhla til-17 enyangeni yeNgongoni eLegends Shed Lodge eZulwini. Kubika Kiani Msibing Nasmuva Shongwe, sise Triloni Park Kamanzini.
Gogo Makoshini Dlamini wendzawo yasemdemezulu ngaphansi kwenkundla yasedokotweni uthi kuhle kubona emaswati abambana ekusiteni umuntu loweswele. Gogo ukhulumele lokhu ngemuva kokuthi amalunga emango wasemdemezulu ahlangane amakhele indlu kulandzela ukuthi indlu lebe alala kuyo bengasekho esimeni esikahle.
Ngemuva kokuthi isive sasemdumezulu sibone simo laphila kuso gogo Makoshini Dlamini sasukuma sabambana sase sakhela gogo indlu. Gogo Makoshini sowuthumise lo msebenzi lomuhle lawendelwe ngummango waveta ukuthi indlu lebe yalala kuyo beyingamgcoba noma kunini.
Abonga mfanami awathi usingibonga kanjani nanya nje sengigesa gogo sogesile sengiyawutibeka ingutshela nayi ningobona ndipho abantu kuthele ngayithenga enosele bucayi mfanami ngoba mangifuna kusi kudla phela ja kodwa anginambhalishi anginamshibo ngivuka nje ngimangale kusi qoqetandla ngento nje ngisebabe Kusile ngabe sengidawudlala do.
Gogo ucela sive ukuthi simbambise kulokusele kude kuphele sakhiwo sendlu lokufaka ekhathi emafastelo njengoba sevele yahlala kuyo indlu ufake emasaka emafastelweni. Lona sifiso ke sekuphonsa liJS Vivaneni angashayela inombolo lethi 76041959. Umbiko uhlanganiswe ngithembelihle Magutsho eMdumezulu.
Kudemidlalo iPhalamende yakangwane seyisukumise ngalokusemthethweni luhlelo lokushukumisa umtimba loluhambisana ne-strategic plan semnyaka wa 2022-2026. iPhalamende ithi sifiso salolu hlelo kusita abahlonishwa timphunga kanye netisebenzi tePhalamende ukuthi tihlale tinguleti-phephile. Lolu hlelo lusukunyiselwe enkundleni yesive kaSomhlolo lapho kube sokuba nemidlalo lehlukahlukene lefaka ekhathi ibhola, umdlalo wemphebedo, i-table tennis kanye naleminye.
Wellness sifuna kube i-department kugcine kuna full coordinator losebenza ndzabadaka wellness ikakhulu sibuke kakhulu ukuthi bahlonishwa mase baphuma bahambe eParliament uthola ukuthi le stress levels ayenyuka nalabangena kuthola ukuthi ungena letinye izinto angadadi kahle. So le initiative kwanyalo sitayitesta ngekuthi siyente once a month but staff sasibekile ku service staff every Friday so kusona ka 12 nje siba ne-activity let's bese kuthe malunga eParliament kwanyalo sitakwenta ama-monthly activities bese siyabuka ukuthi siyirola njani kuyaphambili.
Thile sikhuthata ukuthi nesintiko letensha emasiko nemidlalo ukuthi wonke nabo bahlonishwa nema-senators timphunga bativoce kuqinisa umtimba nekokuthi umtimba ukhona ukuthi bese seulwa netifo letikhona nekokuthi nje sihlale singilabo labaphilile laba healthy futhi mhlambe pheceleti.
Victor Dlamini lohola licembu lelimele live emidlalweni yema-Region 5 Youth Games letabanjelwa eveni laseMalawi uthi leli cembu lifike kahle lilongwe futhi selivele licalile emalungiselelo emidlalo yawo. Lecembu le-taekwondo litawubale ukucala ekumeleleni live kule midlalo. Imidlalo icala mhla ka-2 kude kube umhla ka-11 kule nyanga leSetulo. Live limelelwe nguletingijimi leliqhamuka emidlalweni we-taekwondo, emidlalweni wemadobane kanye nasemidlalweni wekubhukusha.
Iteam yethu ifike itolo ekseni ngabo-2 umvakabonge nje lokuthi le team ithe mayisuka ku camp ekhaya kaNgwane yasimefika emhlumeni border yathola ukuthi kunemaphoyisa lata escorta kusukela emhlumeni ziyofika kule border yaseMozambique lengena eMalawi. Ngaba nje kubonga bo high commission ba both countries kaNgwane nalo seMozambique lokuthi bakhone kubambisana ukuthi le team yethu ihambe kahle. Emasho sibantwana baphephile bafike nga-2 ibe yinze indlela for bona and vele bebathini uma befika but ke umbasho lokuthi bakhonile itolo ukuthi mabefika bathole kuphumula then bese kuthi late in the afternoon bahamba baya kuyula emamasela but nje angisho ukuthi spirit si high baba nabajabulile and almost all the countries la region 5 asakhona kune vibe nje la la sikhona khona kule games village lela elilongo eMalawi eDieng
25 minutes after 7 setiphetanga letoti imidlalo tindzaba tefuthi sibili lo mhla ehlelweni asibohlo etimakethe sitawubuya sitochubeka nehlelo sinshine semozotulu.
Busiseka mzalwane ukubukela umculo wemadodana ahlabelela adumisa uNkulunkulu. Amadodana nendumiso luhlelo lwakhele wena mbukeli ude utawuvuseleleka emoyeni uphindze udumise nelidodana sibabade longabonwa ngemehlo. Phakama Nkosi yemazulu luthumba unonge lwakho. Amadodana nendumiso.
Lifestyle is about attitude, values, interests, and behaviors. And this is Eswatini Lifestyle, the show that shares stories of incredible people, events, businesses, and taste that are meant to inspire Emaswati.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
I do the most. Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni per month. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store.
We're good together. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, the Eswatini government has been going around communities doing stakeholder consultations on the marriage bill of 2020. Gwaka Invotsa, in partnership with the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative, have a project called Women Employment to Economic Recovery. This project has the same aspirations that government seeks to achieve through its stakeholder consultations. Now, Gwaka Invotsa and American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative have taken the shoes of legal reform, wherein they are lobbying for legal aid as well as looking at the marriage bill in depth. For more on this, Armand Perry, who is a lawyer with American Bar Association Rule of Law, joins me. A very good morning to you, Armand. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Sophie. So good morning to you.
Good morning. We want to discuss something that has a lot of technical terms, and I don't want to spoil it. So I just want you to tell me, what are we doing here?
Sure, absolutely. So as you indicated, I'm a lawyer. Obviously, I'm American. You can tell from my accent. But I'm here with the American Bar Association. We're doing a project on women's employment and economic recovery. We're working with several partners. And we're really focused on a couple different methods of kind of reforming the culture here to get women more active in Eswatini's economy.
Let's just talk more about legal reform in Eswatini, the advocacy behind the legal aid bill.
Oh, sure. So the American Bar Association actually previously to this project had another one that just ended in June, at the end of June 2022. We were working very closely with the Ministry of Justice. We had great partners over there. Okay. And we were looking at reforms to kind of open up Eswatini's legal landscape to legal aid. You may notice when you look to some of Eswatini's neighboring countries, you see more of a robust presence of legal aid providers. And in Eswatini, we don't quite see those same types of initiatives. So we were partnering with government and trying to work on some small legal reforms to really open up the space here so that lawyers could provide legal aid, which seems to be a gap that we all can agree on. I'm a lawyer, so I understand we're not always the most liked profession, but certainly increasing the availability of our services, I think, is not only part of our professional calling, but it's just the right thing to do.
Now, the project is called Women Employment to Economic Recovery. That's the project you're working on with Gwaka Involves, I believe, right in alignment with what government is trying to do with the marriage bill.
Yes.
Let us talk more about, because you say women economy, let's talk about the gender and power dynamics, particularly the introduction of gender policies in the workplace. I believe that is something that you want to achieve.
It is. There's 3 work streams under this project. I focus mostly on the legal reform aspect of partnering with government to do kind of some of those technical reforms to the laws. Kwaka and Vodza partners more on some of the gender reforms, working with companies, trying to change some of those cultural aspects that we might find in the workplace and implementing more modernized and robust policies so that employees are protected. Because, of course, you can have legal protections that maybe set the floor for what employers must do. But within a company, you can have different cultures, different work cultures, and employers can always, kind of raise the bar. They can always offer more. They can be more progressive even than the law allows. So.
Right. Now, I believe there's a fund that Eswatini has made a commitment to make itself eligible for. I want you to just brief me about that fund and how you plan to help Eswatini to be eligible to get this money, really.
Sure. Thank you. So, in our legal reform work, we, of course, wanted to partner with government and help achieve something that they want to do. And especially with tricky issues like legal reform, the key to being successful is partnering with something where there's the political will for the reform, right? And so with this one, we're really focused on gender in the economy. And the way we've identified how Eswatini is motivated to really kind of make some progress on some of this legislative reform is that Eswatini's made a commitment in its 5-year strategic plan to make itself eligible for this pot of money that we call the MCC fund. It's the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And it's a big, really big pot of money that the U.S. government gives to developing countries to spend on big, big capital improvement development projects. But to get that money, you have to meet some indicators. You have to kind of tick those boxes. And many of Eswatini's neighbors have gotten that money. So Malawi, Mozambique, Lesotho, they've successfully kind of been able to make themselves eligible. And we're talking about a lot of money. This is not a loan, it's a grant.
It is not a loan.
It's not a loan. You don't pay it back. Yeah, very important. And this is a well-funded initiative from the U.S. government. They budget about $4 billion US for it each year. When they give these grants, they're usually 3 to 5 years, and it's about roughly $100 million per year. So we're talking $300 million, $500 million US to invest in things like improving roads or improving energy infrastructure. That's one that Malawi just did. And Malawi successfully implemented that one. They got another 3-year grant, and this one is now to focus on freight transportation. So there's a lot of money out there that the U.S. government is willing to give for these big capital projects in schools or roads or water or electricity, but you just have to make yourself eligible. So Eswatini has made this commitment. They actually have an economist in the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development whose sole job is to ensure that Eswatini becomes eligible for this money.
Oh, great.
We don't want to leave it on the table and just let Lesotho and Malawi and Mozambique get that money. It should be coming into Eswatini as well.
Yeah.
So we can see that there's motivation from government to want to make itself eligible.
Right.
So in terms of our legal reform, we were focused on some reforms that, of course, will empower women in the economy and improve, their treatment in the workplace and their ability to participate in the economy. But we were also aligning it with making themselves eligible for this money.
Right.
So that's where we landed on some of these reforms with the marriage bill, with the employment bill, is these were bills that Eswatini's government was already looking at, had already begun drafting up. They were interested in reforming. And we just want to make sure, hey, if you're looking at this law that's 40, 50, 60 years old sometimes, let's get it right. Let's tick these boxes so that you meet these indicators and you're eligible for this money as well. The government wants to do that. It's made a commitment to do that. And so we're just trying to provide that coordination and some of that maybe technical expertise to make sure we if we're reforming this act, let's get it right and get yourself eligible for this money as well.
Yeah, quite a lot of money you mentioned there. And I quite believe that it could really help Eswatini, especially in this economic situation that we're currently in. But just before I move on to my next question, do you have a ballpark estimate of how much really Eswatini could get if should we become eligible?
Well, just based on past grants to some of our SADC neighbors, as I said, you can see about 100 million a year over for a 3-year or a 5-year project period is kind of most common. So, doing the math, that would be 100 million would be 1.7 billion emalangeni per year.
Wow.
Right? So that could really improve roads or really improve schools or really improve electricity as Eswatini looks towards its expiring contract with Eskom in a few years.
I want to know where Eswatini rank with regards to the indicator score for eligibility, because I'm aware that it comes directly from a World Bank report, Women, Business and the Law. Where do we rank as Eswatini, and how can we improve our position?
Sure. So there's two questions there. One is for MCC eligibility, there's 20 different factors, right?
Okay.
And you don't have to pass them all. In fact, you only have to pass half. You have to pass 10.
Okay.
So it's not looking for perfection. It recognizes, that there's always work to be done. So we're just focusing on the low-hanging fruit, the ones where it really seems like Eswatini is ready to make those legislative changes and improve. The one we've really identified is these gender in the economy ones.
Right.
And so for that, Eswatini's score, unfortunately, is quite poor, and it doesn't, that score doesn't feel reflective to me of where Eswatini really is at. So for example, the World Bank issues this report every year. It's called Women, Business and Law, and they rank 190 countries, 190 economies around the world. Eswatini, I believe in the 2022 report, was ranked 178th. Between Somalia and Iraq. And so obviously, living in this country, I've lived here for 11 years.
Right.
That's not correct.
Yeah.
That simply is not the reality on the ground.
Where are we missing it?
Yeah, so part of the issue is that when the World Bank goes around and compiles this report, it sends out questionnaires to all these different countries, and lawyers respond. So Eswatini's respondents are typically a dozen or so people and a mix of private lawyers, some people from government, usually the Ministry of Justice or Attorney General's office, and maybe some civil society members or private sector folks. And in those responses, Eswatini gets dinged sometimes just because its laws are a bit old. So a great example is in the current Marriage Act, right? The one we have on the books right now.
Of course.
That act has language about the doctrine of marital power, right? Which is this antiquated provision that Eswatini's High Court a few years ago rightfully found unconstitutional. It said it violates, equal protection for women. But that law is still on the books technically. So the World Bank, even though the High Court has said it's not enforceable, you can't look at that provision, they're not giving Eswatini credit for striking it down. They want to see Eswatini enact a new bill that doesn't have that provision in it. So things like that are really hurting the score. The other ways that Eswatini's score kind of gets hurt more than really the workplace culture is on the ground is just with some of this specific language. For example, in Eswatini's Employment Act, there's a guarantee that women be paid the same as men, equal pay for equal work. But that was written in 1980. In 2022, the World Bank and some of these international standards, they want more specific language. As a lawyer, we might call it a term of art.
Okay.
And they just want to see a little bit more robust language and protections for, to ensure that there's no discrimination in pay based on gender. So, what we're trying to do is say, while we're reforming the employment bill, while we're drafting up this language, let's just be really aware of these indicators so that we're just ticking those boxes as we go along and we don't miss out on this money. Because my assumption is that if we're reforming bills like the marriage bill or the employment bill that are 40, 50, 60 years old, we probably aren't going to get around to doing it again for another 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
So it'll be 2060, 2070 before we do it again. So let's really get it right and not leave this money on the table.
I just want to know how much time would it really require to make these tweaks on the language that you've just alluded to and the equal pay that you also alluded to for us to be quickly eligible for this money, because we definitely do urgently need that money for development in the country.
Sure. Well, there's two issues there. I mean, one is there's just the technical aspect of drafting the language, and so, I'm sure if you asked the Attorney General or someone in the Ministry of Justice, they would say they have plenty on their plate, and they could use maybe some more assistance and staffing, particularly when it comes to parliamentary drafting, that they're updating a lot of laws. So we can offer some of that technical assistance, and we have, particularly in our when we were working with the legal aid bill and reforming that. But then there's the separate issue of the consultative work, making sure everyone agrees that, yes, this is what we want to do. We're happy to have more robust language on equal pay for equal work, or on sexual harassment in the workplace and how we're going to guard against that. There's also some other boxes on maternity leave or paternity leave, ensuring that adoptive parents are protected the same way. So there's just kind of some finer considerations where, in my consultations and really just in my lived experience, Eswatini is there. They support these things. I think government supports them. I think my interactions with private businesses and with employees, these reforms are broadly supported, but you do need to go through that consultative process to ensure that everyone agrees, these are the changes we want to make in the law.
Of course. I just want to know, as a parting question perhaps to this interview, where are we at right now since you started the project?
Sure. On the legal reform side, I think Eswatini is there's a wonderful window right now. We know that elections are next year, but there's a couple bills that are right on deck and just ready to be finalized. The employment bill, in terms of its drafting and getting close to being tabled in Parliament, is right there. The marriages bill is right there, and in fact was tabled in Parliament at one point, right? So it's so close to being passed. When Parliament comes back in session in 2023, we know they'll start with the budget.
Yeah.
And then we know they're going to dissolve for elections. But there's a period in there in between where they can really get some wonderful substantive work done.
Okay.
And we're pushing to say, get this done. For constituents, I would say reach out to your MP and say, you can deliver on this. A lot of the hard work of drafting these bills, consulting these bills has been done. Let's get it across the finish line before we go into elections and have a new parliament and add more delay. So there's a wonderful window here as we come into 2023 to get some of these things across the finish line. And I hope that the MPs will see that opportunity and take advantage of it and really deliver for their constituents.
Armand Perry, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. That was quite insightful, and we hope that every stakeholder that you are working with in this project will assist you guys, and that Eswatini will get this money and we can develop our country.
I hope so too. I really appreciate you having me.
Awesome, lovely. That was Armand Perry from the American Bar Rule of Law Initiative, who just took us briefly there on a project they are working on with Gwaka Invoza. which seeks to just help in terms of women economic recovery in Eswatini, and help Eswatini to be eligible for a fund that they have made themselves eligible for from the American government. And we hope that we can get this quickly and as soon as done as possible so that we develop Eswatini. The time is 46 minutes after 7 this Thursday morning. We're going to take a quick break, and then Lungelele will come back and we'll wrap up the show.
Your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you will receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
I do the most. Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni per month. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store.
We're good together. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show. Sikusele nawo lesanza kuzivulela kulesikhathi sitawubuka leto lethamba imbili kulamanye amave sicala khona eveni laseChina lapho kuchubeka khona siteleki lapho khona badelegela ukuthi kumiswe imigomo leqinisiwe lelwa nemkhuhlane COVID-19 kanti ke kubika ukuthi kube neclash emkhathini kwalabo labadelegako kanye nemaphoyisa. Sisibuke.
With Chinese flags wafting in the cold wind, Beijing's boulevards are quiet. Rather than remain silent, though, some residents are ready to speak out in support of this past weekend's protesters and against stringent COVID restrictions.
The consequences of the lockdown don't affect me too much, but seeing them fighting for freedom, I think is very inspiring.
The lockdown measures are unnecessary. They just need to identify the close contacts and quarantine them. There's no need to quarantine the whole building or the whole neighborhood. Not everyone is a close contact.
Police are out in Beijing watching over the streets. In Shanghai, too, at the site of this weekend's protests calling for Xi Jinping to resign, barricades were erected and police cars stood watch. The order of the top Chinese security body was very clear on Tuesday to ensure there's no dissent over Beijing's zero-COVID policy.
China will resolutely crack down on the infiltration and sabotage activities of hostile forces. Illegal and criminal acts that disrupt social order will not be tolerated.
But protests are continuing despite the crackdown. In Hong Kong, a few individuals held up signs before a university in solidarity. And according to social media, protests turned violent Tuesday night in Guangzhou, with riot police clearing away protesters. In addition to forcefully stomping out dissent and investigating those who protested across the country this past weekend, authorities have closed at least 10 universities. Many students had protested on Saturday and Sunday, but the reason given for sending Chinese students home? To protect them from rising COVID numbers.
Kanti-ke sitawuchubekela even laseMelika lapho khona bahola babili belibandla le-far-right Oath Keepers militia, including founder Stuart Rhodes, were found guilty of sedition on Tuesday in the most high-profile case yet stemming from the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol White House by supporters of then-President Donald Trump. Sinembigo.
After 3 full days of jury deliberation, a verdict has been reached. Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the far-right Oath Keepers militia, has been found guilty of the rarely used charge of seditious conspiracy in connection with the January 6th insurrection on the US Capitol.
We're disappointed with the guilty verdict. We feel like that we presented a case which showed through evidence and testimony that Mr. Rhodes did not commit the crime of seditious conspiracy. There was no evidence introduced to indicate that there was a plan to attack the Capitol.
The rarely used charge of seditious conspiracy is a Civil War-era statute. This is its first conviction in nearly 3 decades, and one of Rhodes's 4 co-defendants was also found guilty of the charge. The nearly 2-month trial showcased the group's efforts to keep Donald Trump in the White House at all costs, and started after the 2020 election, culminating with Trump supporters storming Congress to disrupt certification of Joe Biden's election. Despite not entering the Capitol, prosecutors claim he acted as a battlefield general, and the jury was shown his text messages, videos, including one recording with Rhodes saying he wanted to hang House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The verdict is a significant win for the US Justice Department, and with around 900 people across all US states arrested for participating, it may pave the way for further convictions.
Asikhathalo siyaqhubeka naduta ngaphandle kwakuleli inhlangano yeNATO seyivawe ukuthi sethembise ukuthi itawusita sive sase-Ukraine kulobusika bamanje kulandzela ukuthi kude kahle emanti kanye nagesi.
With winter approaching in Ukraine and below freezing temperatures in many parts of the country, Russia has destroyed or damaged 40% of Ukraine's energy sector, leaving millions without heat, electricity, or water. At a NATO foreign ministers meeting on Tuesday in Bucharest, Romania, focused on helping Ukraine, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of using winter as a weapon against the people of Ukraine.
President Putin is failing in Ukraine. He is responding with more brutality, attacking gas infrastructure, power lines, and trying to deprive the Ukrainians of water, electricity, light, and heating.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba agreed.
When we have transformers and generators, we can restore our system, our energy grid, and provide people with decent living conditions, which President Putin is trying to deprive them of.
Kuleba also called on NATO to provide more air defense weapons quickly, so Ukraine can break the vicious cycle of Russia destroying infrastructure, Ukraine repairing it, and Russia destroying it again. Russia denies it is targeting Ukrainian civilians. Standing beside his Romanian counterpart, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the United States and its NATO allies will not be deterred by Russia's aggression.
Russia has turned parts of the Black Sea into a war zone. We've seen missiles from warships coming into Ukrainian cities and towns. Russian forces, of course, have blocked Ukrainian ports, causing what has been the worst food security crisis in years.
The U.S. announced Tuesday that it is providing Ukraine with more than $53 million in electricity grid assistance, in addition to more than $55 million in emergency energy sector support for generators to help restore power and heat. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
Kanti-ke mengameli welive lase-France Emmanuel Macron uthelekile eveni lase-Melika ngalesithathu lapho khona ayokhulumisa tindzaba letihambelana ne-Ukraine and Russia invasion. Kanti-ke utawuphindza akhulumise ne-China's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific. Noba kunjalo-ke President Joe Biden's latest Inflation Reduction Act alarmed the European Union. Lokho-ke kubita kutsi the French leader Emmanuel Macron thathe isinqumo lesifirm around the US subsidies and protectionism.
A year ago, relations between the US and France were at a low point. A very public spat between the two countries cost Paris a valuable submarine deal with Australia. And in the fallout, President Emmanuel Macron recalled the French ambassador to the US for consultation. Now, as Macron heads to Washington on a state visit, the two countries are keen to show they've put all their issues behind them. The meeting is set to be the first state visit of Joe Biden's presidency, and Washington has left the world under no illusions as to why it chose France for the occasion.
I mean, if you look at what's going on in Ukraine, look at what's going on in Indo-Pacific and the tensions with China, France is really at the center of all those things. And President Macron has been a dynamic leader inside the G7, particularly there in Europe. And so the president felt that this was exactly the right and the most appropriate country to start with for state visits.
Along with those issues, the US's newly passed Inflation Reduction Act, which has been a sticking point between the two countries, is also set to be on the agenda for talks. The legislation provides tax credits to consumers who buy green technology made in the US, including electric vehicles. Brussels has argued these subsidies amount to unfair protectionism, while France says the law threatens to put European manufacturers at a competitive disadvantage.
As if the twin transition and the energy crisis was not challenging enough, we now have to deal with some of the negative impact of the US Inflation Reduction Act. Behind these measures imposed by the US lies a much more important risk, I believe, which is a complete change in investment flow.
Despite Europe's concerns, the White House argues the legislation goes a long way in helping the US meet global efforts to curb climate change.
Alright, sekuselemizwe lemibili kuthishaya insimbi esiphohlongo namhla ekuseni sibongela ukuthi nivuke nasi namhla ehlelweni Kusile breakfast show kukhumbuta ukuthi this weekend i-team ye-Eswatini TV yakhona eSimunye Country Club lapho khona kutabe kune fan park letabanjela khona kutabukela khona iFIFA World Cup.
Kathi nikhumbuta ukuthi Eswatini TV yachubeka nekusakata wona ema games eFIFA World Cup namhlanje siyathi ukuthi nga 9 PM lungelele we will be broadcasting a game lenkulu kakhulu lena lengitawukhombela ababukeli beSwatini TV ukuthi bahlale phansi namuhla bayibukele noma kanjani.
Sale kahle sanibona kusasa.